lot. So I'm just going to start reading right there in verse 1. And it says, "One day, many tax collectors and other outcasts came to listen to Jesus. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law started grumbling. And they said, 'This man welcomes outcasts and even eats with them.' So Jesus told them this parable." Now, I want to stop right there for a moment because there's something really significant here. What we have to understand is that Jesus, he was a Jew. And for Jewish people, the breaking of bread, sharing a meal with someone was really important to the Jewish life and to the community life. Because when you broke bread with someone, that means that you didn't mind being associated with them. That you guys were kind of like family. So the teachers of the law are like, yo, ¿por qué Jesus is eating with all of these like crazy like sinners? Why is he associating himself with them if he, is this great prophet? And so Jesus knew that they didn't really get that, so he's like, okay, I'm going to tell you guys a story. So he says this. He says, "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. What do? You leave the other 99 in the pasture and go looking for the one that got lost until you find it." Now, when I first started hearing this story, I was always like, yo, Jesus, he can't count, because why would you leave 99 for one that got lost? Like that statistically, that just doesn't make any sense. Like 99 versus one little one, you're gonna leave the 99 to go find the little one, and then what if the other 99 all go 99 different ways? Like that's just crazy, why are you doing that? So I started doing some research on sheep. I'm like, why would he do this? And so I found this website called Sheep 101. You should look it up. It has a lot of information on sheep. And so in Sheep 101, I learned that sheep, they are very gentle and quiet animals. They don't really give their shepherds a lot of problems, and they're very social. So they need to see other sheep, because they're best known for two qualities. Number one, they have a really strong flocking quality, so they like to be in groups. And number two, they have a really strong tendency to follow the sheep in front of them. Like it's like an instinct that they have. And like a deviation from from either of those things are like early signs of illnesses. Now I want to talk about the first one, their tendency to flock. For them, their safety is in numbers, because it's harder for a predator, like a wolf or a dog or something like that. It's harder for them to pick out one sheep when there's like a big group of sheep, as opposed to when there's one sheep, all by himself. And so a sheep that's by itself is vulnerable to attack, and I think that's really parallel to the Christian life. It's easier for you to fall, it's easier for you to become prey to the enemy when you're not in a group, when you're out there by yourself alone. And so the other thing is that the sheep have really strong following instincts. So from birth, sheep are taught to follow the sheep that's in front of them. And so they'll do this even if it's not a good idea. Like even if the sheep in front of them just did something like really stupid, they'll still like follow their example. And just to show you guys what I'm talking about, there's this thing that happened in Turkey. I don't even know the year. But basically, one sheep tried to jump off a cliff. Like the cliff was like 15 meters deep, which like 15 meters is actually like 50 feet. And so the one sheep jumped off, and then 1,500 other sheep just jumped off following that one sheep. And so it led to the death of 400 of those sheep. The other 1,100, they didn't die because the 400 were like dead. So like it cushioned like their fall, so they didn't die. But like that's crazy. Like and all the shepherds, I was looking up news stories, and all the shepherds were like, man, we were so mad, we just watching the sheep jump off the cliff. And we're like, don't do it, and they're still jumping, and they're going, and they don't stop. Anyways, so the point is, they have these two really strong natural instincts. So when these sheep go against like these instincts, it's really a sign of like that of early illness. So when you think about the word and how like Jesus is talking about how the good shepherd would leave the 99 to go follow the one, if you think about it, that's really the smart thing to do, because the 99, they're in their zone, they're in their flock. They have a leader, like, I don't even know how, leadership, but they leader sheep. That's what they're called. They have a leader sheep that will lead the flock, and you know, the leader sheep is usually like pretty smart. So he leaves the 99 to find this one that is astray. But what happens to the sheep when they don't lose their flock, they become highly agitated, they become stressed, disoriented, and they just don't even know what to do. So yeah, Sheep 101, if you want to learn more information, just visit me. Alright, verse 5. So then he says, and when you find it, you are so happy that you put it on your shoulders and carry it back home. Okay, another interesting fact from Sheep 101. The average weight of one sheep is 125 pounds. So like, can you picture, because after you done look through the whole valley to find this sheep that done let their flock, you're so happy that you found it that you put 125 pounds, y eso, que eso es una sheep flaca. Si es una gorda, we're talking about 160 pounds. You're gonna throw it on top? No, anyways, whatever. So, but Jesus said that the shepherd's so happy that he puts it on his back and carries it home, all 160 pounds. And then he calls his friends together and says to them, I'm so happy I have found my lost sheep. Let us celebrate. Then he says, in the same way, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 respectable people who do not need to repent. And so the reason why I wanted to go over this passage is because tonight's talk, today we're starting a new series. It's called Come Closer. And so we really want to, we're getting to that point where we just want to work towards getting closer to God. And so tonight's topic is come closer, let yourself be found. Kind of like this lost sheep who was found by the good shepherd. So I want you to turn to Psalm 56, verse 8. El Salmo 56, versículo 8. Psalm 56, verse 8. Alright, and when you have it, you can just put your finger on it because we're going to read it at the end. And you're not going to look up any more Bible passages for today. I'm going to mention some Bible passages, but I'm going to read them to you. Don't try to flip to them quickly because I'm going to just bang it out. Alright? But stay right there, Psalm 56, verse 8. We're going to come back to it at the end before we say amen. And look up when you got it so I know. Got it. Does anybody have it in the Good News Bible already? What page? 505? Okay, do you have the Good News Bible? 515. No, sorry. 515. You got it? Psalm 56? Okay, put your finger on verse 8. Verse 8. Don't press it too hard. Don't want to make your finger purple. Alright. And now look at me. Look at me. And we're going to come back. So, tonight's topic is called Let Yourself Be Found. What's it called? Let yourself be found. Now, why is it important for us to let ourselves be found by God? Well, because that's just the way that things work. If you look in the Gospel of John chapter 15, verse 16, Jesus says to his disciples, it was not you who chose me, it was I who chose you. And it was I who chose you, who appointed you to bear fruit to the nations. In the first letter to John chapter 4, verse 10, the apostle says, this is what love is. It is not that we have loved God, but that he has loved us. So everything that we do as humans, everything that we do is a response to something that God has already done. Sometimes we think we're all cool and happening and all that stuff, and I mean, sometimes we are. I mean, look at me. But yes, I know. Pero everything, no matter how cool and happening we are, is a response to something that God has already done. For example, we can love him because he has loved us. We can follow him because he has shown us the way. We can serve him because he has called us. We can be free because he has forgiven us. We can live because he has died. And we can make individual decisions, like we can choose between right and wrong because he has given us free will and the ability to do so. right? So we can do all of that stuff, we can do because God did something first. So if we want to come closer to God, then we must let ourselves be found by God. Because si Jesús no te encuentra a ti, si Jesús no te llama, then you won't be able to follow him. If you notice when Jesus calls his disciples, you'll notice that the word says that Jesus went to their boat and he called them. It doesn't say that they went to his boat. First of all, he didn't even have a boat. Well, that's not the point. It doesn't say that they didn't go to his boat and then they had a conversation and then they were like, oh yeah, just let's follow you. No. It says he went to their boat. He met them where they were at and he called them by their name and he said, follow me. That's how it works. And so, again, they don't call him, he calls them, and they don't call themselves. And in the same way, we're not going to call ourselves, and we're not going to find ourselves either. Like, have you ever heard of somebody playing hide and go seek with themselves? Like, you don't hide, and then you're like, all right, let me seek me, and you find, and you just don't do it, right? You do not play hide and go seek. That's not the way things are done. So, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, has to find us. So, how can we be found? So I'm going to give you three steps or three things that we should keep in mind if we really want to be found by God. I'll say them, the three of them, and then I'll go through one of them individually. The first thing is, number one, stop moving around. Number one, stop moving around. Number two is recognize your reality. And number three is rely on grace. So number one, stop moving around. What's number one? Number two, recognize your reality. What is it? Oh, no. All right. And number three, rely on grace. Yeah, there you go. All right. So let's go back up to number one. What was number one? Stop moving around. Okay. Don't you hate it when you're trying to find somebody and you're like, where you at? And they're like, I'm at this pole and I'm like at this place. And you're like, okay, hold on right there. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. And then you get to that pole that they were talking about, and they're not there. And then you call them all mad, and you're like, wait, I thought you were here. Blah, blah. Oh yeah, what happened was that I started moving because I just wanted to make your life impossible. That, right? It's one of the most annoying things when somebody just keeps moving around and you're trying to find them. So one of the problems with being constantly in movement is that at times being so much in movement distracts us from our reality. It distracts us from, it prevents us from feeling the weight of our actions. It prevents us from thinking about situations or thinking about our feelings, because in moving around so much, we become really busy. And we become so busy that we don't stop to think about where we really are. But if you stop and you reflect, you stop and you think about your spiritual life and your walk with God, and where are you today versus where you were yesterday or where you were a year ago. If you stop and you think, then you can get to step number two. Then you can recognize the reality of your situation at this moment in time. Because there's really nothing worse. No hay nada peor que una persona que está perdida y ellos no saben que ellos están perdidos. They think they know where they're going. Seriously, there's nothing worse than a person that's lost that don't know they're lost. Like, I hate sometimes going on road trips with my dad because, like, this guy be getting so lost. And by the time I realize we're lost, we have already done like 3 circles around the same block. And like, I already know the name of the bodega en la esquina because like we have gone by it so many times. And I'll be like, papi, tú no estamos perdidos. And he'll be like, no, we're not lost. And I'm like, really? Then why are we doing laps around this block? Like, you can't find where you're going. So there's nothing worse than that, because until you recognize that you're lost, or until you recognize where you are, you won't be able to get to another place because you don't even like know where you are. So if you're, I don't know where you are personally right now, but if you're down in the dumps, or if you have strayed away from the path that God has laid out before you, or if you have done the exact opposite of what God has wanted you to do, then recognizing and accepting that at this moment, that's your reality, that's the first step to getting back up on your feet. I'm going to repeat that because that was kind of long. If you're down in the dumps, if you have disobeyed God, if you have walked away, if you have strayed from any plan of God in your life, Recognizing that that's your reality. That's the first step that you need to take in order to get back up on your feet. Accepting your reality is painful sometimes. It sucks to think about, the fact that maybe you're not as holy as you were last year, or maybe you don't pray as much as you should, or maybe you're going back to things that you used to do before you met Jesus. Realizing that, it sucks and it's really painful, but it must be done. If we truly want to make progress with the Lord, we need to keep it real with ourselves. And I'll give you an example of that in my own life. I started serving the Lord seriously in June of 2008. And so that's this June, that'll be 6 years since I was Jesus, that's it, I'm going hardcore, I'm going home. So I've been trying for almost 6 years. And something I've noticed is that making the Lord number one in your life is a struggle. Can I get an amen to that? Right? The struggle is real, right? It's real. Yeah, amen. All right, but anyways, it's a struggle. And I think a lot of people struggle making God number one, they putting other people before God. A lot of people have that struggle. Me personally, I've never really had that struggle. My struggle has always been putting me before God. Because if I have to choose between you and God, I'll be peace. Let's go, Jesus. But if I have to choose between me and Jesus, I'll be it's better, man. I kind of me. Hold on. So that's always been my struggle. And I remember one time we went to this retreat in New York. It was a leaders retreat. And on the first night, they talked about how we had to give up our Isaacs. And if anybody doesn't know the story of Isaac, basically Abraham, he was a man of great faith. And in his old age, God made him a promise that he would become the father of many nations. He never had a son. And at first, it was kind of hard to believe because he was already 100 years old, and God was talking about, you're going to have a son. And then he had a son, and they named him Isaac. But then when Isaac was a little older, God asked him to sacrifice Isaac. He asked him to sacrifice him and to kill him. And so Abraham was okay, well, and he was going to do it, but all of that was just a test to see if Abraham was going to be willing to give up his Isaac. So we get there, and the leaders talk about, God wants us to give up our Isaacs, and so they gave us a little paper. They were write down your Isaac on the paper. So everybody's already crying because everybody loves their Isaac. And so they're oh my gosh! So people are writing down their Isaacs, and then we're facing this way, and so in the back they had this curtain, right? And so after everybody wrote down their Isaacs, they were all right, turn around, and then they had this table, and there was a priest there. And so, basically, they told us to go and bring our Isaacs up to the priest, to offer it, because in the Old Testament, the priest would offer sacrifice to God. So everybody took their paper up, gave it to the priest, and then after that, they had pulled down the curtain, and then Jesus was there, in the Blessed Sacrament. So it was, down to the side, it was local and everything. It was serious. But so afterwards, we're all talking, and everybody is man, my Isaac was my mom, my Isaac was my girlfriend, and I'm sitting there feeling not guilty because I'm damn, Isaac was me. Y'all care about your brother, your sister, your mother, your girlfriend, and I care about myself. I'm sorry, but anyway, so that's always been my struggle. So whatever, since I've known that about myself, I always I'll try to fight against that. But this is where negligence comes in, and sometimes when you're not paying attention, when you're not staying alert, that can really get you in trouble, because I think that some time ago, I'm not sure when it happened, but some time ago, I stopped paying attention to that. I stopped keeping that in check, and it got me into some real trouble. And here's why. It's because I think when I was growing up, there was a lot of important people in my life that I felt they disappointed me, or they let me down, or I felt they chose other things over me. And so as a result, it's always been, and it still kind of is a little bit, but it's better. It's always been really hard for me to get close to people, or for me to, I don't know, let people into my heart, or not even romantically, but even as a friendship too. It's just always been something difficult. And for years, I refused to let myself get close to anybody. I would just be hi, from like, I'm not hugging you kind of thing. Like, it was that serious for me. And I think these past few years, like, Jesus has definitely been helping me, like, overcome that. And he's brought a lot of wonderful people into my life, like many of you guys. And I'm not just saying that because, I'm not just saying it. It's like, yeah, you could cry a little bit. Because none of you know me, like my goddaughter, I gave her a hug like 3 years ago, and she wrote it down in her phone, like as a note. Like, it was like June 27th, Marlene gave me a hug. And then the other day, she sent me a picture of that. And I was like, oh dang, I guess you're telling me you're due for another hug. Right? I was like, I got you like in Christmas, don't worry. But anyways, the point is that like God has brought many wonderful people into my life, like all of you. But this is where I started to get myself into trouble, because I stopped paying attention and I stopped evaluating myself and I stopped recognizing my reality. And so little by little, what happened was that Jesus started to come down on the priority list, and other things and other people started to rise up past Jesus. And like I didn't even realize that was happening. But here's the thing: Jesus is the only person that's perfect in the whole wide world. I know some of you guys think I'm perfect, but sorry to bring it to you. I'm not perfect. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm not. So Jesus is like the only person in the whole wide world that is perfect. And he's the only person that will never disappoint you, the only person that will never let you down, the only person that will not give up on you. And so when your priority list is mixed up, like you feel the effects of that, because that's what happened to me. I started to feel the effects of that. I started to feel the disappointments from things and from people that were rising above Jesus. And I mean, no matter how much somebody loves you, sometimes people hurt you, not even intentionally. Like, they're not even trying to do it. They just happen to do it. And so I remember that, like, there was one point where I felt so much pain and so much disappointment that it really just brought me to my knees. Like, it just brought me to my knees. And I remember that I was sitting there in Mass, and I was like, I just felt so down and so hurt that I just said, like, these words to Jesus. And I was literally like, Jesus, for real, like, real talk, I wish that for once, like, somebody would, like, choose me. I wish that for once somebody would choose me. And then, like, the Lord spoke to me so, like, clear and so fast that yo hasta me asusté. I was like, oh my goodness. Because right away, I just felt the Lord speaking to me in my heart. And he called me by my name and he said, Marlene, somebody has already chosen you. And at that moment, I saw the priest taking the host into his hands. And, like, literally, the words of the consecration were just like, at the time he was betrayed, he entered willingly into his passion. And he took bread, and giving thanks, he broke it. And he said, behold, this is my body, which will be given up for you. And then after I heard those words, and like you hear those words a lot, but sometimes like, you become desensitized to it. But at that moment, it was so powerful for me because of what I had just told Jesus. And then after that, I just felt the Lord speak to me again. And he just asked me, am I not enough for you? And I couldn't respond because I knew deep down in my heart of hearts that at that moment, my answer was no, you are not enough for me. Because I wanted other things and other people. And he was not enough for me. And I understood that he was telling me that if no one else in the whole world ever chose me, that didn't matter because he had chosen me. Because since even before I was born, he had chosen me, and I could forever let go of any rejection of all of that pain because I had not been rejected by the person that mattered most, and that was him. And it was embarrassing to admit that to myself that the God of the universe, I felt like he wasn't enough for me, and it was especially embarrassing because I have been already walking with the Lord for like a minute. So I felt like I should have known that already. Like there's just things that you should already know. And I just felt like I didn't believe it in my heart. Like I knew that in my head, but I didn't believe it in my heart, and it was manifested in my actions and in the things that I did. So I asked him, I said, Lord, how can we fix this? And then that's where step number 3 came in. And step number 3 was rely on grace. See, God's grace is Grace is the intervention of God in our lives. It's an intervention of God in all of our actions so that they might be holy. Right? Grace is God's help for us, for every single situation in our life. We don't deserve grace, but it's a gift that He freely gives us. In the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 8, St. Paul says, he's talking about a suffering, a trial that he's going through. And he says this: 3 times I prayed to the Lord about this and asked Him to take it away. But His answer was, my grace is all you need, for my power is greatest when you are weak. I am most happy then to be proud of my weaknesses in order to feel the protection